Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
Wherever you call home, we are there. In favorite places, large spaces, for many homes, we have coverage that fits the way you live. And with our home systems protection, you can cover major home appliances and more. We cover more type of homes than ever. Get the coverage you and your family deserves. For a free no obligation quote, visit us online or simply give us a call.
Back at you in Gloves Off. Today, I have a great guest, a great martial artist, one that's been around since the 70s in South Texas, Maestro Manuel Lozano. How are we doing today?
We're doing good. Professor, thank you for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
No, thank you for always being there and always being a friend.
Absolutely.
And a good role model, because there's many
thanks.
that are not like you. So that's very. I'm gonna say a little bit of things about you for people that are just tuning in. For those of you out there, Maestro Lozano has been around since the 70s. He was highly involved in the Korean arts. Then came down, and he was one of the ones that brought down Arnis with Professor Remy Presas, and went to the Philippines and came back. And along the studies, he went into Mexico and realized that there was some components to martial arts and a lot of indigenous little small villages, festivals and stuff. So he went compiling with a lot of professors and archaeologists what it was there, and he put together a system of the bits and pieces of the fighting arts that were around Mexico. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, number one, thank you. And thank you for what you've done. And because when you redo some of these researches, a lot of people, are skeptical. They only believe that the martial arts came from the Orient, and there have been fighting systems throughout all cultures and through all mankind. So it's always evolving, and it's always been there. It's just part of human nature. So let's go back to those days when you started seeing that there were some martial applications in Mexico, and what you said, you know what, there's something here.
Yeah, man, wow. You're taking me way back, even before I joined martial arts, because my brother and I would box at home and would wrestle outside and fight with oleander branches that are like whips, man. We were always practicing without, and I didn't even know martial arts existed. I mean, we saw Bruce Lee on the Green Hornet and that kind of stuff. And then one of my brother's friends, when he was in 8th grade at Stell Junior High here, told me that there was a guy there that knew martial arts or karate, that they were at the skating rink, and some small gang jumped him and they even hit him with the skates in the head and, made him bleed and all that stuff. And he just went crazy with all kinds of kicks and spinning kicks and just beat the, what out of all of them. I said, out of all of them? He goes, yeah. I said, my God. I mean, it's only an 8th grader. I was in 10th grade at St. Joseph's Academy. And I said, I bet I can beat him, because I always thought I was pretty tough. Like we all think we were pretty tough when we were young. So he says, no, you can't. I said, yeah, I can. He goes, Manuel, I've seen you fight and I saw him. You can't. You cannot. I said, oh, okay, well, then I need to meet this guy. So we go to the drive-in theater, the Charro drive-in theater with the car and all that stuff, right? And during intermission, I go to the snack bar. We were watching those Kung Fu movies back in the day. And he's outside the snack bar with some nunchucks around his neck. Can you believe that? and he had long hair. He looked pretty stocky. I was a little bit taller, and I introduced myself, and I said I like to, I didn't even know the word sparring existed. I'd like to fight with you. He goes, sure, man, anytime. He was coming over Saturday morning. So he told me where he lived. I went, and he was there by himself in the apartment. And he goes, well, you ready? I said, well, hold on. I said, can you do something? I'd like to see you do something. He goes, sure. And he jumps up and does a jumping front kick real high, real fast towards the ceiling. And man, the way the pan sounded when it snapped and he came down, my jaw dropped. I said, oh my God, wait, can you do it again? He was sure. And he did it higher and faster and stronger. And man, I said, but you know what? I don't want to fight with you. Can you teach me? He goes, yeah, I can teach you. I said, okay, great. And he was 14, bro. I was 16. So we started training. And that's how he had come down from Beaumont. He was from the style of Chung Do Kwan in Taekwondo. And there was a school here run by a Korean master, Chang Pyo Taekwondo. And he had moved to Plano, Texas, or somewhere up there, and Mesquite, Texas. So I didn't join until a year later because I was involved in sports, right? But I got to practice with guys that practiced there, especially him and a couple of other guys. And by the time I joined, the Korean master wasn't there. It was a Puerto Rican, Norberto Sanchez, Rabo, who trained under Jose Santamaria. You know him. And Jose Santamaria trained under Yemo An. They just passed away, I think, not too long ago. There was some postings of his passing. And Yemo An was a direct student of the founder of Muru Kwan, of Juan Ki. So that's how I started. And then I saw in Laredo, which was one of my favorite places to go to tournaments, I saw a Korean master give a demonstration of Hapkido, Hyun Kim from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So I asked him, I wanted to become a student. I wanted to learn. So he invited me to some seminars in Baton Rouge. And at that time, the grandmaster and founder of Kuksulwan, In Hyuk Soo, which his title was Kuksanim, National Teacher of Korea. And Kuksulwan combined all 31 arts of Korea into one. So Master Kim helped them spread Kuksulwan because Grandmaster Soo's American student, number one student, was from New Orleans. And he sponsored him. But he and Kim, I would think he didn't want him close by. He didn't want to compete. He says, I'll help you spread the art, but you need to open your headquarters in San Francisco. It's a big Asian community out there. So they called the seminars Kuksul-Hapkido seminars. It was a 5-year plan. And I like to tell you, Paul, that I was the only one that went to all 5. I can mention names of known martial artists that went to one or the other, but they didn't go to all 5. I have the certificates to prove it. So after that, I went to Korea. We were going to go in 79, 78, but for some reason they moved it forward to June of 81, which we went. And there was a big group of Mexican martial artists that were under Antonio Marquez, the Okinawan Karate-Do Federation. And all his black belts from all over Mexico went. So I got to meet them all. And by then I had read a bunch of old books on Mexican history. And I had found there's a chapter devoted to the art of war. Okay. And I found the name in the history books. So I started asking them questions, and they gave me a lot of information, especially one of his master instructors, Professor Ramon Flores from Guadalajara, who was very knowledgeable in the old arts of Mexico. And he helped me a lot. So I was all excited, So when we got back, I started traveling to Mexico to find out. And by accident, I met Don Virgilio Reyes Vasquez there in Teotenango del Valle, which is a little bit southwest of Mexico City. Okay, because I wanted to go to some pyramids deeper down south in Malinalco. Those are the ones that are carved out of stone, which are very few in the world. Anyway, we went to the pyramids, me and one of my students, and it started raining. And I said, I'm going to get down. He goes, no, I'm not. I said, well, I am. This is what I came for. You can wait here all you want. And I went and I walked around in the rain. And I asked the kid, if he knew anything about martial arts, and she didn't, who knows what he can tell you, And I said, who's in charge here? He goes, Don Virgilio. He lives down there. And we're up in a big hill where the pyramids were. And he said, see that big church over there? Yeah, he goes, it was right in front. So we drove down looking for the church, and there was a house. And I went and knocked. And man, they didn't open the door for about 10 minutes. I was soaked and wet. And he finally opened the door. And he let me in, and we started talking. And he was a professor of archaeology in the University of Toluca. No, in Mexico City, UNAM, Universidad Nacional de Mexico. He was a professor of archaeology there, and he was a professor of tourism in Toluca. So what he would do in Mexico City, teaching archaeology, he would send his students out to do their theses all over Mexico, because in Mexico they have like 63 different distinct native peoples, So and he asked them to write down as much information as they could find in any kind of ancient art, of fighting or whatever. So when they would come back and give them and turn in their theses, if he would find anything, he'd give me a call and says, hey, come down, I need to see you, because he never discussed it over the phone. So there I go again, go see him, and he would send me to different places. But like I said in an interview here a long time ago, if you're going to go to Mexico looking for a martial art, good luck. You're not going to find a complete art. You're not going to find a complete art. You'll find, stories and legends and that kind of stuff, and it's up to you to put it together. And
technique in there.
Yeah, so on that trip, Arturo McDonald was a judge here now, and I left from Brownsville, went to Tampico, through Veracruz. Then we went towards Mexico City, and when we stopped to eat on the side of the road when we left in the morning, there was this man walking with a bag on the road. And I told her, what, let's give him a ride. No, he said, yes, give him a ride, man. The guy, look at the man, So he stops, and then he tells me, tell that guy to go in the back of the truck. Because it was a one-seater and a small truck. I said, nah, he's going to come in the front with us. I want to talk to him, Yeah. So he comes in the front, puts his back in the back, and we start talking, and I tell him what in Mexico for, and he just looked at me with a smirk, And his name was Don Noé Silva. He was from Molango, Hidalgo, but he was going to Pachuca. We were going to pass through there. He gave me a lot of information that people he knew that could probably help me in Oaxaca, But my deal was to go to Mexico City and go to Malina. That's when I met Professor Reyes Vasquez. So that's how that started. But before that, I had read a bunch of books in of Mexican history. I found the word of Yaomaxtia, which is, I pronounce it that way. But then I found out through my fencing master, Maestro Ramon Martinez, the master of arms, the one that put Destreza back together again. When I gave him the name, he was Manuel. That word there, Maxtia, is not with a T. There must have been a misspelling. That word is Greek, and it's pronounced magia. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. And that word means the exercise of. And Yao is Nahuatl, the ancient language of Mesoamerica, of the Aztecs, Nahuatl, that many tribes spoke. And it means war, the exercise of war. I said, well, what's a Greek word doing in this? He goes, listen, Destreza wasn't put together till 1560, way after the conquest, okay, by Don Jerónimo Carranza. And the arts that were taught in Spain were brought from Greece and Rome. The gladiators that fought in the circus that art was called ars gladiatoria. But the civil martial art that they got from there for civilians was ars palestrinae, taught by masters called lanistas that would travel around teaching the art to make money. And in all the words, all the nomenclature, if you will, it is all in the Greek language. Okay, so when they came to Mexico, there was no destreza yet. It was ars palestrinae. You know, from what do they call those? Soldier of fortune type guys, you know. So when they came here and saw the Aztecs fighting and practicing and stuff, practicing really, because there's a big chapter under practice. Because what did they call what they were seeing? Yaumagia. This is just my findings, you know, my opinion. And
Sure.
so
And it makes sense because there's a lot of cross referencing, especially with the cross changing of the words and the usages, especially from the Greeks to the Romans. The gods are the same ones; they just changed the names, you know. And Spain was part of Rome, and a lot of people don't understand that. And you're right with the soldiers of fortune. All the conquistadores that came over, that's what they were. You know, they were professional.
yeah, they got paid, you know, to fight, you know.
Yeah. And
So
they conquered. Por eso se llaman conquistadores, because they came here to conquer. And what they saw, they named after what they knew.
exactly.
Bringing that into what you said about the destreza and the fighting and all that. I remember we used to live in San Luis Potosí when my father was over there. We lived there, and there used to be a little town called Santa Maria del Rio.
Yes, sir.
And we used to go up there, and it was up in the sierras, up in the mountains. And that little town, Santa Maria, there used to be festival, and we went to the festival several times, you know. And these guys would carry around a machete in a leather sheath.
Right.
They used to call it la larga.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll fight with the machetes. That's what they, you know. The machetes will come out, and the same guys that will cut each other up over there on Saturday, Sunday night. My dad says, I'll be suturing them up in San Luis Potosí on Monday, you know.
Sure. You're come for some patch up work, you know.
But
yeah, that's how all this. Look, in Monterrey when we were kids, because my grandma was living in. Well, she was from Monterrey, right? And in a suburb called Guadalupe, and we walk over because you come out of her front door and you look to your right, and there's a Cerro La Silla right there, man. You know, beautiful sight, man, inspiring. You know, and a couple of blocks down was the entrance to a place called Ciudad de los Niños. Okay, there was a church there, a soccer field, basketball courts, and little houses. You know, like they all look the same. You know, and who lived in there were the orphans. Okay, and way down at the bottom was a river, and that's where the cable cars would go up to the top of the mountain right there, but it was already out of service. And it was built by people from Austria. And the reason it was out of service because some people got killed going up there. You know, the cable broke and all that shit. So it was stopped, no more. But it was right there to remind us. And there was a restaurant bar. You eat outside, and the river, and a nice circular bridge. You could stand in the middle of the bridge and see the beautiful water flow. And towards the back, that nobody went when we would go climb the mountain. There was a little swimming pool. They called it, with water that came from the mountain, they called it La Pila. Next to La Pila, Paul, was a statue of an Indian warrior with a bunch of rocks around the bottom. And I told Hector, what's this? He goes, this was one of our famous warriors from this area. After the conquest, and people fled north. You know, the Indians fled north. The Tlaxcaltecas, who were some of the Aztecs' biggest enemies, the ones that helped the Spaniards fight them, when they came up here. This guy was he fought with them, and he was very known in this area for fighting those guys off. You know, because they had betrayed the Aztecs. So I said, wow, okay, you know, that's pretty neat. It's pretty neat to know, you know. So there's things like that start interesting you because, hey, man, there's something here, you know. People just don't survive to pick up a rock and throw at somebody. No, you got to have a system, man. You got to have an art. And you know that just as well as I do. So on my trips down there, you know, your plan never goes as the way you want it. You have a plan, yeah, sure, but life takes you in different directions, meet other people. It's a good place to start with a plan, but a lot of things happen in life, you know, they take on their own form. And that's the beauty of research, you know, that you're going to run into things that you didn't expect, which is the beautiful part of all this. And that's how all this started. And I went to many places. And on that trip, no, wait a minute. It was another trip that I went. I had a real bad accident outside. I'm almost drowned. I almost wasn't here. You know, that was a near-death experience, but that'll be for another time, you know, because it was a spiritual awakening for me. But we went down to see the fire. Look, I bought I had a magazine of National Geographic, December 1987. Was it 87? No, 81. I still have it somewhere around here. And in there is a story of some fights that were held in two different towns, especially Citlala, Guerrero, where they dress up as jaguars and they fight with rope, hemp whips that can crack your skull. Because I saw them and I felt them. We went down there and another beautiful martial arts story down there, you know, and they didn't speak Spanish. They spoke Nahuatl. The one that would interpret for us was our taxi driver, you know, and we got to interview the mayor from there. I have pictures and film and all that. And he told us a lot of information, a lot of important information. And in another town, they had wrestling matches of guys dressed the same way, but not the same mask. The mask in Citlala was made of leather, hardened leather. So they hit you in the head, you know, it pretty much cushions the blow. Not as much, but it does. But the wrestlers had like a regular Mexican mask, wrestling mask, you know, and a lot of throws, a lot of techniques. So that was pretty good. Then let me fast forward. Then I meet Mil Máscaras, right? I wanted to meet him. I wanted to learn from him. I wanted to record course from him, which I gave you one. And we started talking and interviewing him. And he said that when he had learned from different wrestling masters, right? But then they sent him to go train with El Diablo Velasquez, I think, in Guadalajara. He was a legendary wrestling trainer of Mexico. He trained all the big shots back then. So he went over there, and at that time he was 20. That's when he won. Maybe I'm revealing too much, but people know. He won the national championship in physioculture, you know, weightlifting and bodybuilding and all that stuff. And he was only 20 years old. So he got there and says, hey, I was sent by so-and-so to come see you. Yeah, sure, I've been expecting you. He goes, well, first, wrestle with my boys and let me see where you're at so we'll know from where to take off. Mil Máscaras tells me that in a rather short time, he made them all tap out, like 3 or 4 of them. So El Diablo Cuauhtémoc Velasco tells him, hey, ya sabes todo, güey, you know, no tengo nada que enseñarte. Right? You know everything. I got nothing to show you. He goes, but I will show you something you do not know. And he says, oh yeah, what's that? He goes, el chingadate. Chingadate. They also called it la pistola or el cohete. So me being inquisitive as I am, I went like that with my hand, you know, pistola, like a gun to shoot somebody. Go, no, wait, no. In English, it's called shoot fighting.
Shooting.
Yeah, shoot fighting, you know, wrestling, catch as catch can or whatever. So catch wrestling. So he says, and I said, like that, that's a vulgar word. He goes, that's right. And I said, and they call it chingadate? He goes, yeah. And I said, why? And someone said in Spanish, he goes, porque donde me toques o me agarres, te chingas. Wherever you grab me, wherever you attack me, you're going to screw yourself up. I'm going to do you in. He goes, this is the art of the real wrestlers for the street. Back to Ars Palestina and Ars Gladiatoria. Same comparison, you know? So it's a bone-breaking art. So I said, oh, yeah. Because he told me this in his apartment because he has a big house in Mexico City. and he has an apartment downtown to people that come visit and they fly in. And I said, oh yeah. He goes, yeah. He goes, well, orale, come on, strike me, grab me, do what the hell you want. And he's wearing his green pants, a t-shirt without sleeves, a green mask, green boots with gold on it, and we're in his living room. But this was at his house. And I'm thinking, oh shit, hope he don't hurt me, because he was a big dude, man. So I grab him all of a sudden on his shoulder, on his left shoulder. His left palm hits my elbow joint, just enough to, give me a little bit of pain. And he goes, you see, I would have broken your shoulder. Your elbow. He goes, try something else. So I tried to close in to grab him, and he threw a headbutt, and he stopped at about half an inch away from my face. He goes, I would have broken your face, man. And I said, well, that's not wrestling. He goes, no, it's chingadate. And I said, really? He goes, yeah, you want to try anything else? I said, no, I don't know. And I did it in the old Hollywood fashion. I turned around before I turned around and punch. And I front kick him. I wanted to surprise him. Man, he jumped out of the way. He scooped my leg, grabbed me by the throat, picked me up, turned around and threw me on his couch, and he started laughing. Ha, 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 ha. ¿Qué te pasa, Manuel? What's wrong with you? And I said, no, that's it. No more, man. I'm convinced. I said, I want to learn that, So he came down here a couple times, 3 times. In fact, when I turned 50 a long time ago, he came to my party. He was one of my special guests. He taught me a lot of the stuff, but he didn't want me to teach it to anyone. I said, well, then how is it going to survive? You need to teach, So when I mentioned Chingarate and other podcasts like this, man, there's a lot of disrespectful people out there.
Oh yeah, no, and it's true, and those arts like shooting and so I'm going to take back into, because sure. in Mexico there was a lot of French. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And, yeah, there was a lot of French in there. In the 1850s, 1860s, 1870s, there was an art that was developed. There were 14 wrestling type arts in France, wrestling type arts.
Yeah, sure.
And one of them was called shooting. And one of them was called lutte parisien, lutte midi, lutte Buitron, and there was lutte turc. Okay. And a lot of people don't know that those wrestling arts were very much involved with. Some of them were Navy, some of them were cavalry, some of them were Army, some of them were artillery, and they went throughout. And in Mexico, you had a lot of French. Yeah,
in Guadalajara. In fact, one of our best friends at the time, he had a tournament. We went over there in October of 1982 with Ray McCallum, may he rest in peace, and a bunch of my brother, and a bunch of other guys. They flew, I drove. He was French. He was white guy with blue eyes, red hair, but perfect Spanish. His name was Joseph Dubois. And he came and lived at our martial arts school here because he wanted to come and live in the United States. He became a cop here because he had a dual citizenship, got into the DEA, and, he trained a lot with us, and in Cadereyta, it's full of French people. You see a bunch of people with blonde hair, red hair, blue eyes, green eyes, and they all, because there was a French base there, shall I say? A lot of French from back in the day were stationed there, like they were pretty much all over Mexico. So yeah, I understand. There's a lot of styles that develop independently, Paul.
Absolutely, and but there's a lot of phrase, especially when you said shooting. And I remember my professor Paturel used to say that the lutte parisien and those arts became shooting at the Victorian era.
Yeah, sure.
And taken around the different festivals.
Just like in England, they had different wrestling styles,
Absolutely. And here you had catch a can.
Sure. Catch wrestling.
And the catch wrestling inside the carnivals and stuff like that you would always see them. And that's lucha libre. It's, of course, very much so. It's very well documented. I'm glad you did that. But, people do not understand the history. That's what this is. This is what this is about. People are so into the mediocre, just this came from here, Buddha brought it to here, and this is what it is. Everything else is false. No, there's way too many martial arts all over the world.
Man, you'll never learn everything, man. No. when I was in Taekwondo Murucuan under Sanchez, who was under Santa Maria and all that, I wanted more. and I wasn't getting it there. No offense to my teachers, but it wasn't filling my cup. So when I met Hyun Kim of Hapkido, and I learned, man, I really got into that. I was involved with that for 10 years exactly. I didn't give a damn about rank. I wanted to learn, But then it seemed like after a while, it was real hard for me to get my black belt. I got retested in Korea, and it was hard, man. I had a problem over there. One of the masters, Hyun Kim, I wanted to quit. I didn't want to be in martial arts anymore. I was so depressed and so angered because it was all political bullshit, that the grandmaster saw me with my top turned inside out. So I don't know. I don't want to get shit with Cook So-on. And he says, "What's wrong? Do you know what's wrong? What they did to me? Disqualified me for some bullshit reason. I went there to win, man. Not to mention my preparation for it was another story." And he says, "Listen, from here on, you become my student, not Hyun Kim's. When you go back to United States from LA, fly to San Francisco, wait for me there. I'll be there in a couple of days, and you'll be under me." Well, shit, man, it was even worse. Okay, because later on, they started the money deal got into their head. See, we're the one that started their national tour of seminars. Because I would invite masters to come to my school as soon as they were coming from Korea. They all wanted to come to Brownsville. Yep. Okay, and they loved it down here, man. They really loved it. So he started touring to other schools, and we started that. I was the first one to start, and I started it. The Ernesto Presas, his tour, the IPMAF, the International Philippine Martial Arts Federation. The very first one was organized by me and him here in Brownsville. And we held it in the Philippines in March of 93 because he came down here in 92 in late July through one of my students when I was in Austin. He says, "Hey, I'm going to the Philippines. Who do I look up?" I said, "Look up Ernesto Presas, his Remy's younger brother by 10 years. So years go by and Terry Keller, my student from Austin, calls me, "Hey, sir, Terry, what's going on?" He goes, "I'm in LA. Ernesto Presas is here. And can I send him down to you so you can host him for a seminar?" I said, "Sure, send him down." So he sent him down here and we met and everything. And I had him teaching a seminar in Matamoros. I was the first one to take Arnis, Destreza, Hapkido, because it wasn't Cooksul yet, to Monterrey, to Mexico. Okay. I was the first one to bring a lot of these arts to Texas too. I mean, I don't care about all that. Nobody knows. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't think so. See, nobody cares about, like you said, history. Nobody cares about all that, and it's kind of hard for you to blow your own horn,
Yeah, I get you.
So that's how all this started, Paul, and in Mexico, what I did when I started, one day in 2004 in January, I woke up one morning in the new year and I said, "Okay, this is it. This is the year I started training in fencing." I didn't know anything about destreza. Because Bruce Lee always recommended
Fencing.
For all serious martial arts to study fencing. So I look up a fencing seminar, and I was almost about to pay with my card to some seminar up in New Hampshire somewhere, man. But I said, nah, something made me keep scrolling. And I run into a page where there's this Spanish fencing master holding the sword down with a point on the floor and just looking very imposing. Ramon Martinez and all this Spanish. I said, what? This is it. So I called him and he happened to answer the phone. We spoke for about 2.5 hours and I became his student. And as we talked, like you and I are talking, he told me, "Manuel, the book, Tao of Jeet Kune Do, is 90% fencing theory." See, a lot of people, when that book came out, I understand. Well, yeah, you may understand the boxing and the wrestling part of it and the kicking, but you're not going to understand the philosophy because it's based on fencing. Okay? So then after that, I went back to read the Jeet Kune Do after learning all the philosophy, all the training, what Destreza is based on. I understood Jeet Kune Do a lot better. All of a sudden, it's like that book, they're cracking the cosmic egg. Like all of a sudden, like, oh shit, this is not what I thought. This is a lot better. Now I understand the beat, the half beat, I understand it now. It's all from fencing. You understand? So all this theory helped me in my own progress. Okay, I translated 10 of those books See this book? This and the reason I point, see this book? This is on the Spanish saber. Here it is.
Yeah, you translated it.
I translated. I translate like 10 books, but I only got to print about 5 because my friend, the owner of the print shop, sold the print shop, and blah blah blah. So okay. And the other day he called me and we talked, and he had taken other jobs. You know, we do things to survive.
Absolutely.
He says, "Hey man, I got my print shop again." I said, "You still have all my books in there? I got everything. You want to print anything?" I said, "Hold on." So now I can go back and print the ones that already in file. They just need to be printed. You know.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that's how all this started, Paul. You know, through fencing. It made me, and the reason I showed you these 2 books, if you really study these 2 books, here's your knife fighting art. Here's your stick fighting art. Here's your sword fighting art. Aquí está todo, compa. All the rules for fighting with and without weapons are found in this art. Why? Because everything is broken down scientifically. Okay.
Absolutely. Fighting was a scientific art, and a lot of people do not understand that. And those empires or those kingdoms that had warriors that learned it that way, like the Romans.
Sure.
You know, they knew
how to fight. They knew how to fight.
And I keep bringing this back. The Spaniards came here, and they were called conquistadores, means conquerors.
Yep.
They came here. 300 men took down the Aztec nation. People say, "Oh, yeah, they had help and they had everything else," but you do not get allies if you do not know if you're not superior in fighting over them.
That's right.
Okay? And people do not understand that. You do not get allies if you are not stronger and better at fighting than them. And that's what martial arts is. And that's why we've been friends for a very long time, because you've understood that and you taught that. And a lot of people, like you said, the money came of age and everybody started going, now I want a black belt. Now, I mean, you can go down the street. There's 3 schools, whichever way you want to go, whether left or right, or down the street. And your kid can be a black belt in a year and a half. And, you know, you paid your $3,000 on the contract or whatever it was, and he's a black belt. You know, it all boils down to fighting. Can you fight? And then if you teach the fighting essence, the art, then you learn how to be peaceful within yourself. You calm yourself down. A lot of people think, "Oh, you teach people to fight in the street." No, I teach people to learn how to defend themselves and be able to take care of themselves in a chaotic situation in the street. You're not here teaching somebody to go out there and beat up others.
I see instructors like you do post a lot of their training and everything on Facebook. And to quote my older brother, Julio, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. You know, a bunch of selfies and parents' night out and pajama day and all this bullshit. What the hell is going on? When we trained, it was like military style. You could hear a pin drop in the class. Okay? When they told us to rest in place, at attention. Not yelling and jumping in water and everybody fighting over themselves with a water fountain. None of that shit, you know? None. 45 minutes of training, 2-minute rest, get your color back, get your wind back, boom, start again, another 45 minutes nonstop. Man, we were in shape. We trained the hard way, you know, and now who trains like that? Nobody. You want to train like that? People are going to quit in droves.
You know, I trained the way I was trained. I trained the way it was. You know, I trained people the way my teachers trained me. And I trained my son just like, oh, I'm going to train you and I'm going to train your son if your son comes in. And people kind of take, you know, we had one guy come in, this story. Kid was 10 years old, 9 years old at that time, 10 years old at the time. He had been with me for several years. Great kid. And the mom comes in. It was a Christmas. And she goes, when is he going to become a black belt?
Oh, shit. Right away, huh?
I go, probably when he's 17, because that's when in Campo, that's when traditionally you can test for black at 17.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So at 17, just like my son, just like all the rest of them. Also, he's not going to get a black belt now.
Get
The kid had just tested for purple, I believe. So no, it's going to take him a while. And then she goes, well, because his cousin has started 9 months ago, and he's already a black belt. And I go, good for him. He goes, well, so if you're not going to get a black belt now, I'm just going to pull him out and take him over there to that school. I said, go ahead. Boom.
go ahead.
They'll sacar. Years later, they call me up because the kid had gotten into trouble, started hanging around with the wrong crowd. At that other school, the instructors and the kids, the teenagers, would smoke out in the parking lot, están fumándose afuera. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you are who you hang with. And if you take people, and people say, oh, he's a black belt, he's noble. No. You know as well as I know, there's a lot of great black belts, great martial artists, and then there's some that are just
No doubt.
characters. And some of their characters, some of these individuals out there, their characters are,
Well, look, what I said, I didn't mean everybody. Like you just said, there's a lot of real good people that I respect, admire.
Yeah.
Some I don't care about,
Yeah.
because you know that sooner or later, Paul, we all get tested.
Yep.
And if you're not prepared, who are you going to blame? A lot of these schools are teaching a false sense of security.
Yeah.
Just because you're a black belt, what, everybody's supposed to be afraid of you? On the contrary, they can't wait to make an example out of you. And if you're not prepared, you're going to have a problem. Like in some of those books that I would read, I read them all. I have them all there. I can show you all of them. All the Spanish books, I had them printed by my friend who owned the print shop. And I read them all. And they gave us a lot of advice. And the two that stuck out the most was one of them by one master said, above all, train to kill. Train to kill. Because the art of the sword or knife, it's to kill. Another guy said, this is from the Spanish fencing masters. One of them said, how was it? He goes, expect, how do you say it? The enemy knows when he's going to get can I get it, man? My mind went blank, which I told you a while ago. Expects to get killed when he knows he's making mistakes. If you're making mistakes and the other guy doesn't make mistakes, you're in for a surprise of your life.
Absolutely.
Okay.
A lot of people don't understand that. Once, my uncles were the ones that taught me, and they had two systems of the blade. Uno they decían libélula, the other's pattern, they used to call it frelón. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Frelón y la libélula. And I'd put sacatripas because I saw a fight in the street with the sacatripas at a feria in Nuevo Laredo, where one guy fought two guys and pulled out a sacatripa blade, disemboweled one of them, and cut the other one in the throat. And I just remember him turn around, and I saw that curved blade. I was 15 years old. We're not even supposed to be.
Okay, Paul, and that curved blade became popular with El Valiente and La Chalupa.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
then,
one, right?
La Loteria, and I remember the next day I came in, and I would always train with my uncle on Sundays, right after church. And I told him, and he goes, "Where did you see that?" And I told him what happened. He goes, "Those blades are called." He goes, "You have two curved blades in Mexico. Tienes el trinchete y las sacatripas." What he had was that's a goat herder blade. El trinchete is the pruning blade, which is a fixed blade.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. And then when we're there talking, he goes, "I don't want to teach you anything about the knife, porque una vez que usas, and I'll say in Spanish, now translate in English, una vez que sacas unas sacatripas, tienes que estar decidido en la muerte."
Oh, yeah, definitely.
In other words, when you pull out a sacatripa blade, you have to already have decided on death.
Shit,
And
any knife.
you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that that stuck in my head, and I was like, what does it mean? So he wouldn't want to teach me the blade. The one that taught me a blade was my uncle Hector. He was the first one that started that, because I got in a fight here in Laredo, and because of boxing, I still have the scar, and I'll show it to you. I had boxing, and the guy did this to me, and I did this, and here's that cut with the blade.
Yep.
I don't know if you can see
Yep.
right there.
Yep.
And all I did was block it. If I wouldn't have blocked it, learned the blocks correctly, it would have hit me in the heart.
Yep.
And people do not understand that. The blocks are your oh shit move. That's the last resort. And if you can move out of the way or esquive or get out, that's where it's all. That's where it's at. So then I started going after the blade, and I started realizing what the blades were. And I remember one time you said, "What's the type of knife fighting that you all teach?" And I go, "Sacatripas," because I'm favor that blade. So then everybody said, "Well, there's no such thing as a sacatripa knife fighting." Well, you better believe it that there is.
Sure, there is. There's a lot of knife. Look, in this book, Tratado Completo de Esgrima del Sable Español, there's chapters in the back on how to defend yourself against different blades, like the jambia, I think it's called, from the Arabs, from the Moors, even from the Filipinos. And this book was published in 1862. He was the captain of the Spanish army that went to the Philippines. And Paul, in the Spanish saber system, they have a striking system, okay, and a parrying system, just like Arnis. And out of every strike and parry, there's different answers. So we practice against all the answers on strike number one, all until you don't think about it no more. I know I could be practicing somebody and looking and correcting somebody over there while I'm with this guy over here. That's our goal, to get to a point where you don't have to think about it. It's second nature. And to get to second nature, you got to practice them hundreds of thousands of times, each one against all angles of attack. So I think in reality, the way this guy talks about in the Philippines, and this, when I mentioned this one time, I got a lot of guys that are real deep into Filipino martial arts got into big arguments with me. I said, go read the book. It's not my opinion. It's a guy that was there. So maybe I'm just an opinion. Maybe they got their striking system also by seeing these guys, like you said, superior fighting techniques.
And listen, the Philippines were part of Spain. The Philippines were conquered by the Spaniards. I don't care what they say. They've killed Magellan, but I say this: the Filipinos were part of Hispaniola to the day.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't say that. And then they became, of course, part of the U.S. and now they're the Philippines. But they were part of Spain.
Yep. So
people need to understand that. So it's not an insult. It's just to understand history. And that there's a lot of people. Well, it is.
The most important thing is to leave your ego out of all this and learn from history, learn from people that are making a difference, and use it for, like Bruce Lee said, take what is useful and discard the rest. That's it. Bruce Lee wasn't egotistic. He wasn't, man. He got what he thought was best to develop himself. He just happened to call it Jeet Kune Do because everything needs a name. If not, what do you call it? The art of fighting without fighting?
Absolutely. But, Manuel, and that's what happened with what you did with the techniques of Mexico. You compile them all together, this technique, this area, and you brought it together into one.
You just reminded me. See, I work with lawyers, and we would be sent to go talk to clients all over Mexico. And in Veracruz, we were up there, man. It's kind of like a rainforest. It's always raining up there in the mountains. And when we got to the client's house, because everybody gathers around to see what's happening, man. That's how it is in rural areas. Everybody wants to know what's happening. And a bunch of them, like you said, had their machete in the sheath under their arm, right here by their chest, by the ribs. And I told them, I would ask the wrong questions. If they know anything about self-defense or martial arts, they're ignorant of that. But as soon as you ask them, can you fight with it? See? And I said, okay, can I get some information from you? But in movement, he goes, what do you mean? I said, let's say that can I borrow a machete from somebody? With all due respect, I'll do the attack slowly, and you do what you need to do, but don't kill me, man. Don't hurt me. Don't cut me. No nothing. I just want to share some time with you. No, sí está bien. They're very humble. Borrow a machete, and I strike one, and he blocks it and cuts. And a lot of them weren't even blacks, Paul. They just move out of the way and cut your arm.
Yeah,
They move out of the way and cut your neck and your whatever. They didn't even block.
And that's what knife fighting is. You just move out of the way. You're not there. And that's eventually where you're supposed to be at.
Look, and I'm glad you brought that up, man, because I was going to forget about the main topic here. When I went down there, found out, and I had read some books and talked to people. Mexico used to have knife fights, public knife fights. And in 1938, the president, Lázaro Cárdenas, didn't want any more knife fights, people, getting hurt. So they passed a law, La Ley del Arma Blanca. Anybody got caught with a knife, they're going to jail, right? And the best knife fighter in Mexico, Don Jose Gomez, he was undefeated in over 50 fights, but he never cut anybody's face and never attacked the eyes. Everywhere else is okay. He never stabbed anybody. It was all cuts. Okay, he cut them up until they gave up, and if he knocked somebody down and they couldn't continue, he didn't want to cut nobody in the face or in the eyes, so they could make sure who was standing above them.
You know why
Do I know why?
You know why you don't cut? And a lot of and you see a lot of arts from the Philippines and from Indonesia. They want to cut the face. In Mexico, you have the it's still not Neopolonic law. And that is mutilation of the face. And once you mutilate somebody in the face, you're doing time. And even in fencing, you do that. So Neopolonic law in France is a lot different. In Germany, it was an honor.
It was an honor to have a scar on your face.
The face, because it was a fencing thing. And in France, they took that off way back when.
Sure. So this guy, Jose Gomez, was described by his peers as a tiger with a knife. And he was so fast, you couldn't even see in which hand he had the knife, because he was ambidextrous, just good with his left as with his right. Okay. So when like I told you, when these two books helped me put the art of knife fighting, at least mine, not yours, not anyone else. This is just my findings. Everything is there. All the rules for knife fighting is there. Okay, so I coined the art Navaja del Tigre. Why? This is the art of Don Jose. I can't say this is the art of Don Jose Gomez. It's too long. But since he was described as a tiger with a knife, well, what logically, Navaja del Tigre. El Tigre means him. So if anybody, I told people before, if anybody says, I studied Navaja del Tigre, no, you didn't. You lying SOB. You didn't. It doesn't exist. It exists here with me, but not, you won't find it out there. Paul, when you go researching, you're not gonna find everything on one trip. Not just you been to France and Europe and a lot of places. Hey, man, it's hectic and it's hard and it costs money, and it's sacrifice and it's stressful and all that.
It's time and where you go and why you learning with him. You should be learning with this other one. No, I want to learn with that's what I saw in France. The lack of respect for the older professors. I want to learn from the old professors.
Yeah, those are the ones with the knowledge.
Those are the ones with the knowledge. I want to go. So I used to go to their houses and learn, or they used to meet me at ASPTT where I used to teach, and they used to go over there and give pointers here and there, and you're like, that's what you want to learn from. That's what I came here. I was there for 3 years. Lived in France.
That reminded me when I was in the Philippines in March of '93 with Ernesto Presas. We were training at Luneta Park, which is a popular area there in Manila. And there was this old man all the time sitting down watching us. And I asked, and by the way, Ernesto Presas, when he came down here in late July and stayed here till November the 1st, I got married in September 18th, and he became my best man. He didn't bring a suit, but I took him to Amigo Land Mall. I dressed him up, and from top to bottom, suit, tie, everything, shoes, belt, todo el pedo. And I invited him to be my best man. He was sure, and my older brother Julio. In fact, my pictures of our wedding, he's right there signing the certificate. But you know what, Paul? I'll show them to you privately, but I don't post those kind of things because, first of all, it's nobody's freaking business. Nobody's business, It's personal for me. So anyway, I asked Ernesto Presas, mi compadre. I asked him, sir, who's that old man? He was, he's an old Arnese teacher. I said, can I approach him and talk to him and maybe he can show me something? Well, sure, go ahead. So I go there real respectfully, bow to the man, and he shook my hand real humbly, And I asked him if he could show me something, and he put out his hand like, give me a stick. But he looked at Presas, and Presas said, yeah, go ahead, man, kick his ass, to him. So we got, and I have pictures. I have Hawk, Hawkeye, don't you?
Yeah, I know.
Hawk, okay, Hawk went with me on that trip. I don't want to say anything because Hawk may get mad, but man, he was getting sliced and diced by the Filipinos when we were practicing with a knife, and he would stop to take notes. I said, no, man, come on, because he was my partner. Take the damn notes later. No, I got to do it now or I'll forget. I'll remind you. I don't want to waste time for you to go write down your shit, come back, try and go, come on, man, So anyway, I don't know if he was the one that took the pictures for me. So anyway, we're training, and man, he would close in and wouldn't even let me use the stick. Yeah, and he did it empty hand. And then with the stick was even worse. And I have pictures, Paul. And he always had a smile on his face. I have the pictures. So anybody doesn't believe me, you want to make a bet. Usually when I know I'm going to win, I like to make a bet. You know what I mean? So, man, he was good. Like you just said, learn from the old guys. They're the ones that they're the ones that got it. They're probably looking at everybody and saying, okay, you know what? This guy has potential. This guy has no business here. By the time you talk to them, they already know who's who. See or no? Yes or no?
That's right.
So that's how it is, So it's been a very interesting journey. We went to a lot of places, my brother and I. I went alone a lot of times. A lot of interesting things that happened along the way that it would take all day to talk about all this. But all I can say is that it was very interesting. Learned a lot, met a lot of people.
And it needs to be told. And people do not understand that. It needs to be told. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation. But the thing is, we need professors like you out there.
Okay, hold on. Let me show you something. Look.
Yeah.
Everything's in here. I just haven't finished it. And I have volume 2 and volume 3 ready. I even have 2 books on Navajo tea. I got everything ready. I'm just glad that my dear friend Efrain Duran from Harlingen, who owns the print shop, decided to go back to the printing business. And he says, hey, man, I'm here for you again. So hopefully soon, you know what I mean? Because everything costs money. Everything costs money. You're printing a lot of books. It costs money.
And I'm glad that you're doing that. I'm glad you're pursuing it and keep going with it. And we'll get together this time around. But let's do this. Thank you for the sharing of knowledge, because we're going to be running out of time with ahorita. Sure. We can continue going forever. But I'm glad you did what you did and document that and historically, because it has to be done. It has to be done. And I want to thank you for continuing to do the martial arts for this long period of time. And let's move forward. Let's get together soon.
Well, I thank you for thinking of me and considering me. And, it's an honor for you to choose me, on this topic. I stopped teaching. It'll be 7 years in June. A lot of this students, don't appreciate this stuff. And it got to the point where I didn't care anymore, Why? Because they didn't care. And no matter how hard you try to make and train, we didn't just sit down and talk, No, we train, man, sweat, let's go. A lot of repetitions. They don't want to do that. So you know what? Why am I going to waste my time? I figure if somebody wants to learn, the real thing after finding out a lot of things they didn't know, well, maybe they'll ask me.
Well, we'll do this. Number one, I want to thank you once more, and we'll end it right here. But folks, we're going to leave you with this. You all stay safe, be safe, and God bless you all. And much peace, my brother. All right.
Thank you, brother, for having me on the show. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Have you ever wondered about what happens in a martial arts studio? Well, you start right away by setting goals, building determination, gaining focus, building skills, all while becoming more fit, gaining confidence, and learning self-defense. Buitron Academy is a school where attitude meets aptitude. So give us a call at 956-401-4868.